Welcome to The Lock Shop with Nielsen and Hustler, powered by Coolbet Canada.
Happy Tuesday, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Lock Shop. Nielsen and Huss back with you once again. Thank you very much for popping by for a visit, whether you're watching live or you are downloading on the podcast and listening to at your convenience. We appreciate it, and of course, it's brought to you by our partners at Coolbet. When you sign up, use the code LOCKSHOP. Huss, what's up, buddy? How you doing, man?
Well, what is up is 2-0 now in DGen NFL preseason bets. Shout out to Chris Streveler, former Grey Cup champ and Bomber, for leading another big game-winning drive last night. But I'll tell you what, dude, I was out golfing on Saturday, so I didn't see the majority of the Saturday CFL games. But we had a great start being 2-0. Shout out to the Elks. Man, not only did they cover, one on the road as the money line. And you had said you wouldn't be surprised if that happened. That was a nice pick. But damn, we got a good number with Montreal, only -2. And they win by 1, preventing a perfect 4-0 week. But first time ever, we've been all on the same side. And 3-1, pretty darn good. I think it's been about 2 months since we've had a losing record on the CFL. So, hopefully we can keep this thing going. And obviously people around here in the Peg looking forward to seeing the Bombers back in action after their first bye week, taking on the Stamps on Thursday night.
Yeah, a little bit of a heartbreak. That close to a perfect week. But like you said, we've been crushing it pretty good in the CFL, especially when we're on the same side, which will not be the case this week. We're going to get to that right away. Lots of head-to-head action this week in the Canadian Football League. We're going to get to a little Brooke Henderson coming up a little bit later on. We'll tease a few things that we got coming up both later tonight and then later in the week, and of course tour championship picks as well. But let's just get right into it, buddy. CFL, I can't believe we're already on week 12. Like, the CFL season, it's been very entertaining, and it's been flying by, man. Flying by.
Yeah, it sure has. And I mean, listen, we can't really get into these games, and I know we'll probably, obviously, when we're talking about BC Sask, without pouring one out for Nathan Rourke. I mean, listen, I mean, as a Bomber guy and one that hoped to see the Bombers win it again, and BC was clearly the biggest threat to that. But it just absolutely sucks for the CFL, for the Lions, for football fans. I mean, Rourke had been such an incredible jolt of energy for both that market and the league. And just really unfortunate to hear about this Lisfranc injury. I heard Mike O'Shea talk about it today, just basically agreeing of how brutal it is for the Canadian Football League. And he's young. Hopefully he comes back well. Would love to see him play in one of those games at the end of the season against the Blue Bombers. But I guess the big question is, can Michael O'Connor keep things going the way they've been, which has been 8-1 on the season so far? Huge shoes to fill for another Canadian quarterback in BC. But I guess we'll get to that game in a minute.
We will get to that game in a minute. Let's start with the one in Winnipeg. I'm going to be flying into Winnipeg tomorrow night. Today's Tuesday, right? Yes. I'll be flying in there tomorrow night, and really look forward to this game. Interesting things developing with the Calgary Stampeders. Looks like Jake Maier is going to start as opposed to Bo Levi Mitchell, which is very interesting. And it's really interesting because Calgary's 6-3. Like, their losses have come against the Bombers and then one against the Lions that they should have put away, and they're still moving away from Bo Levi Mitchell. And I get it. I mean, he hasn't been great, that's for sure. But we're both on the Stamps. This is the only game that we agree on this week, and you've said it multiple times in Lock Shop House. You don't get rich betting against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Yet here we are. What's your reasoning behind it?
Well, I mean, first off, I think that the Stamps are still a really good team. And if you're getting 6 points with the Calgary Stampeders against anybody, including Winnipeg, you have to think long and hard about taking it. I think back to the 2 previous games between these 2 teams, they've been incredibly close. I mean, the thriller here in Winnipeg that came down to that final play. I mean, if Jordan hangs on to the football, we're probably not talking about a perfect team going into last week in that bizarre way that they lost to the Montreal Alouettes. So, there's nothing easy. There's no easy wins. You don't cruise to victory against the Calgary Stampeders. And then you add in the mix of Jake Maier, very likely being the guy that is QB1 for this game. I think that's huge for Calgary. Like, I remember back here last season, Dusty, and I can't remember whether you were doing this game or not, but Calgary came to Winnipeg and Maier got in that game and drove them all the way down for what should have been a very makeable kick for Rennie
I did
Parody.
do that game. Paredes came up short.
And he missed it. And, I left the game going, God damn, Calgary's done it again. They found another. Corey, it was Dave Dickinson. Then it's Bo Levi Mitchell. And it seems like Jake Maier's the next guy up. So I think that this is only going to be a positive for Calgary. I think he goes in with knowing that this opportunity is huge for him and frankly makes the most of it. I think the Bombers are going to be pressed. Now, they do have the luxury of some extra rest. Hopefully that line will look better than it did against Montreal. But, with Maier playing, potentially getting Kadeem Carey back, I mean, this is still a very, very good football team. And, considering the way the Bombers have won a number of games this season, it wouldn't at all surprise me. In fact, I expect this game to be exciting and come right down to the final minutes of the fourth quarter. So all that being said, I certainly hope the Bombers win this game, but I don't feel comfortable laying 6 points. I'm going to take Calgary +6 on the road in Winnipeg.
Yeah, I think you laid it out very well. I mean, Calgary on the money line's +187. The Bombers are -233. The total's at 48.5. And then the Calgary Stampeders, the one thing that jumps off is them getting 6 points. I'll be very interested to see where this thing closes come Thursday afternoon prior to the game. But I think you made two good points here. One, Calgary Stampeders are too good of a team to be having to get 6 points in a football game. And the Bombers, as you mentioned, they've won some tight games against teams that are not as good as the Calgary Stampeders. So I think the number's too much. I think people are probably looking at the questionable Calgary quarterback situation. The odds makers might not think Jake Maier makes the Calgary Stampeders a better team. I think with the way that Bo Levi has been playing, he probably does right now. It looks like they're going to get a couple of other pieces back offensively as well, which should make a difference. I don't know how the bye would factor into this for the Bombers. A chance to reset after that loss. Maybe they do come out flying, but this is an offense that has been steady but not spectacular so far this year against a pretty good Calgary Stampeders defense, who are obviously missing Titus Wall, who's been excellent in his first year with the Calgary Stampeders. But I just think it's too big a number. I mean, if this was Winnipeg -2.5 or Winnipeg at 3, probably be a little tempted to maybe go that way. But Stampeders as a 6-win team, getting 6 points here, I'll take that all day. It's just too big a number, man.
Yeah, that was sort of the way that I went. All right, enough agreeing. Let's move on to the rest of the game. You know what? Listen, this Ticats Argos game, which is at 3 right now in favor of the Argos, is this is essentially as close to a coin flip. We're basically talking about these two teams. We're giving the Argos home field advantage, which honestly, at BMO isn't much of home field, especially against a team like Toronto. I mean, I imagine the Ticat fans will travel for this game and probably be just as loud as Argo fans will be. But I'm surprised at what's happened to the Ticats. I mean, they lost some real key players, a number of which are playing for the Argos right now and have turned into difference makers for Toronto. And I've sort of soured on Hamilton throughout the season. I am more high on the Argos and the Alouettes in the East as opposed to Hamilton and Ottawa. So given this opportunity, and listen, they were close. They probably shot themselves in the foot and should have had a better result against the Calgary Stampeders last week. So I do think that the Argos come back and get this win. Listen, betting this, if I was just betting this on my own as opposed to, picking spreads, I think I might lean towards the money line because it wouldn't at all surprise me if I end up getting burned like we did with Montreal last week, -2 and only winning by 1. I think this will be a close game. I don't think they run away with it, but I really do think that the Argos in most categories, at least so far this season, have shown that they're a better team than the Hamilton Tiger Cats. They're at home. I'm going to take the double blue to beat the arch rival Tabbies, and I will lay the 3 points.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with the Ticats plus the 3 points. And the one thing that's kind of really surprised me, and I mean, they ended up losing to the Montreal Alouettes, gave up it was a crazy, crazy finish in that game. But the numbers for Schultz in that game, I thought, were pretty impressive. He was 20, and this is a guy that I always kind of viewed in Montreal, and maybe it was on me for viewing him that way, but almost like a gimmick guy in your offense at the quarterback position. For Hamilton in that game against his old team, he was 27 of 39 for 303 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. And I think that's against, from what I've seen in person, you've seen it in person, that's a pretty good Montreal defense. And Schultz went out and put up over 300 yards passing and a couple of touchdowns, managed to look after the football for the most part in that game as well. And I worry about the Argos offense. I've never been a big MBT guy. Like, I'm just not sure he's got the composure and focus there and temperament, to be honest with you, to excel as an elite quarterback in this league. Not having Andrew Harris kills them. They essentially didn't really run the ball at all in their last game. So I know it's game 3 of 4 for these two clubs over a 5-week stretch, but I'm gonna ride with the Ticats on the road here, buddy. And you said it. Ticats fans will travel well. I mean, there'll be just as many of them there as there will be Argos fans, and I think that'll help as well. But Schultz really impressed me last week, so I'm gonna ride with him for another week and see if he can continue to build on that.
Yeah, he's good. I mean, listen, MBT has, hey, he's a guy that basically came back from the dead last season and earned this starting job, but is now the guy right now. Although I would have plenty of time for a little Swag Kelly if they wanted to go a different way. We saw him get his first quarter touchdown last week or the week before for the Toronto Argonauts. MBT, listen, you look at his numbers. I mean, last year and this year, I mean, he has gotten hot at times. And yeah, is he an elite quarterback going up against the Caleros and Rourke's and Bo Levi Mitchell? Probably not. But I mean, again, this is the JV division of the Canadian Football League right now. So you don't need to be Damon Allen or Anthony Calvillo to get wins in the East. I think the Argos are good enough to get it done. Why don't you start off with this one? Riders, Lions. We were waiting for a line to come out, and it's BC -4. They were 3.5-point favorites on the road last week and ended up getting it done. I'm a little surprised. You still have faith in the Lions covering 4 points without the guy that has been synonymous with their wins so far, and that's Nate Rourke. Fill me in.
Yeah, it's almost as if I just don't have faith in the Riders to get the +4. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sitting there at the Lions, I'm going, man, Nathan Rourke. We know Nathan Rourke is a stud. I mean, we've all been watching this league forever. I've been doing the games for the last 2.5 seasons, and there's nothing like it. I mean, we haven't seen anything like this guy in a long, long time, and he's not there anymore. The one thing I do know about O'Connor, and I did a bunch of O'Connor's games in university because I was the Can West TV play-by-play guy then, and when he first came in 2015, led UBC to a Vanier. If you can protect this guy, he's going to be just fine. He's not going to be Rourke, but if you can protect this guy, when he came in at UBC, if I recall correctly, they had an excellent offensive line, and he literally just stood in the pocket and picked apart Canada West defenses. Like, there was a few other good Canada West quarterbacks during the 10 years that I covered the league. O'Connor was the best. It wasn't even debatable. So I'm interested to see what he can do with 2 things. One, an excellent receiving core. And are they looking better than they are because Rourke is pretty much 100% accurate? Sure they are. But Burnham can play, Whitehead can play, Hatcher can play, Rhymes, I mean, basically you throw it up this year, he's coming down with it. So O'Connor's got that going for him coming in. The other side of it, their defense, I still love BC's defense. They're starting to establish a little bit of a pass rush, which will certainly help. The other thing that I want to get to on the offensive side is Jordan Maksimic has called an excellent season so far as the offensive coordinator for the BC Lions. I mean, obviously he gelled with Rourke, and Rourke executed a lot of the stuff that they needed him to. It might be difficult. The only reason I'd make a play on the Riders here, and I contemplated it briefly, is their defense. Riders' defense is excellent. I mean, they're excellent defense, but their offense has nothing going. And I know it's Cody Fajardo gets replaced by Mason Fine, and what's going to happen this weekend? They're going to go back to Cody Fajardo. Here's the 4 things you need to know. Well, the 3 things you need to know about the Riders' offense right now. Okay, 1, their offensive line cannot block anything to save their life. Cody Fajardo has been sacked more than any other quarterback in the Canadian Football League. It's not even close. This is a guy who's already injured, and clearly when he's at his best like he was a couple of years ago, he was on the run, he's making plays on the run, and they can say what they want, 80, 85, 90, 95%. This is not Cody Fajardo. Cody Fajardo gets out of the pocket, runs for 60, 70 yards per game. He hasn't been able to do that. So you got that going for you as well. And then you got the play calling of Jason Moss not helping anything either. I mean, everybody goes, they don't push the ball down the field enough. And that's because I don't think Jason Moss calls the game that way. It's dink and dunk. It's this and that. It's frustrating. So I don't have faith in the Riders' offense to even keep up with an O'Connor-led BC Lions offense. So because of that, I'm going to take the Lions -4 and, probably hold my breath a little bit on it, but I'm going to get with the Lions -4 going home against a Riders team that offensively just don't got it.
This would be a huge win for BC if they could get this done and get to 9-1 and be right on the Bombers' heels, even without their all-star quarterback. I do, and I would love to sit here and say this is just a bet against the Riders because they stink and they haven't been very good. They've been incredibly mediocre, to be honest. And since their 4-1 start, Dusty, they're 1-4, and they played against some better teams. And they've got 2 against the Bombers coming up right after this game. Honestly, this seems like in some ways almost a season-defining game for the Riders. If Nathan Rourke was there, I don't think any of us would even consider taking Saskatchewan. But this is an incredible opportunity to get to an inexperienced quarterback with a very good defense and maybe for once put Cody Fajardo in a much better situation to put up some points. Now, your point is very well taken. They have done a terrible job protecting him. And it's part of the reason why he's been so beat up for this season. But I honestly think that either way, this is a bet on the Saskatchewan Roughriders defense, keeping it close. And listen, I wouldn't be surprised if they won this game outright. Now, maybe that's a massive overreaction to one player, but that one player has been the MOP in the league up until this point through 11 weeks of the season. So I'm going to take the points and the Riders. I was stunned that this wasn't lower. I thought this would maybe be more like 2 or 1 or even a pick 'em, to be honest, with the loss of Nathan Rourke. But it's quite clear that the odds makers and the bookies over at CoolBet are not overreacting to the Rourke injury the way that maybe I am and much of the public is. I think that this number may very well come down because I just think that the logical reaction when you see that number, knowing that Rourke is in, is to go on the other side and take the points with the Riders. Be fascinating to see if they can't get it done. I think they do, though, and I do like Saskatchewan +4 in BC. Get a close game, probably a low-scoring game, and certainly the under. This game opened, I think, at 49. It's now down to 46.5 right now at CoolBet. So,
that's a huge drop.
Big time. And I think, people are obviously somewhat cautious about what BC's bringing to the table, and I don't think anybody has much confidence in the Riders.
2 good defenses, though.
Forget,
2 good defenses.
And Duke Williams out, probably, the number 1 threat for Saskatchewan as well.
Jamal Morrow out as well, which might even be more important, although I like Frankie Hickson. So, I mean, they have lost I do think Kyron Moore is coming back, so that helps a little bit. But, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a great game. This is going to be a great game. I can't wait to watch this game. Can't wait to watch it.
Well, me too. And then it brings us to the final game, and what a grand finale for the week. I mean, you've got some pretty interesting matchups: Bombers, Argos, Ticats, Riders, Lions, and then we finished with speaking of the JV division, the 1-win Ottawa Redblacks traveling to Edmonton to take on the Elks, where they have never won a home game as the Elks, if I'm not mistaken. What are we at now? Well over 1,000 days.
Almost to 1,100 days, yeah.
The green and gold fans went home happy. This is an impossible game to pick. And needless to say, if I was not contractually obligated to pick all 4 of these games, this would probably be the one that I left off. Because as much as I thought the Argos Ticats game was a coin flip, this is more like one where somebody has to win. Ottawa looked so bad at the end in the second half of that game against Edmonton last week. I'm almost rethinking my selection right now, just replaying that in my head. But at the same time, think of how bad Edmonton has looked at times this year, especially at home. And I don't know. I mean, the Elks, considering they haven't won in literally forever, the thought of laying points with them anywhere, even at home, is not something that really gets to me. And I have to say this, Paul Appolise, I think, is absolutely coaching for his job right now. I mean, I'm not sure. I haven't looked ahead to see what their schedule is, if there were points. But the thing is, the East, even with one win through the first half of the season, they're actually not out of it if they could get this going. But to me, you'd have to think that losing back-to-back games against the Elks, the way they played so far this season, might be a death knell for Lapo. Listen, I know he doesn't have Jeremiah Masoli, and the quarterback position just isn't there. But again, the Elks have been so... I still can't believe this team has won 3 games. I mean, when you go back to how they played, I mean, it is amazing. But maybe they had their best game of the season in Ottawa last week. Anyways, tough to beat a team 2 times in a row, even one as bad as Ottawa. I'm going to close my eyes, hold my nose, and take the points with the Red Blacks. And if I have to, I might even watch this game.
There's not much of an explanation for me here. It's as simple as this. The Ottawa Red Blacks are so bad, they allowed an Elks team that struggles mightily to outscore them 21-0 at home in the second half of a game last week that they pretty much had to have. And then they've announced they're going to Nick Arbuckle, the very quarterback that this Elks team that struggles has already cut loose this season.
Revenge game. Hello, Nick Arbuckle revenge game.
Not with that
okay.
arm. Not with that arm. There's no revenge game with that arm. So I'm on the Elks -3. He's on the Red Blacks +3. We're going head-to-head, Riders, Lions. Watch for that game and see where that line finishes come the weekend. Argos, Ticats. We're going head-to-head, 3 points in that game. And then we're both on the Stamps +6 Thursday night against the Bombers. Shall we head to Eastlake?
Hey,
Huss.
Hey, just very quickly before we leave the CFL, of those 4 games, with the lines that we have right now, which line do you think moves the most before kickoff?
Let me bring them back up.
When I look at this, I wouldn't be surprised. I think that the Stamps will get some action tomorrow. I bet that Stamps Bomber line ends up around 5. I could even see it get to 4.5. And I think my pick for the question that I just asked you is either that game or potentially the Riders. I really do think that the public is going to jump on Saskatchewan and Saskatchewan fans in general getting that much with the question mark at quarterback for the BC Lions. But is there a game out of those 4 that you kind of think that, you know, if you were going to get on it, do it now because the number won't be as good when you get to kick off depending on the side?
I think Stamps +6. Like, mostly because we knew when this line opened that Rourke wasn't going to be there, right? Like, we know what the Lions are rolling out. Yeah. We don't know how it's going to work, but we know what they're rolling out. The Calgary Stampeders, we said it right off the top. I think they're too good a team for this number to not close closer than the 6. So, yeah, I'll say Calgary. It's a fun question, though. But, yeah, I think Calgary. I'll go with the Stamps for sure.
And by the way, Mark Leggio, with that incredible choke job on that kick last week, has somehow turned the Bombers. I think the Bombers at one point were like +140 or 145, and now they're +180 despite the injury to Nathan Rourke. So if you're a Bomber fan waiting for a better number and you think the team's going to win the Grey Cup, not sure you're going to get better than the +180 that Coolbet's hanging right now.
All right, let's slide over to the Tour Championship. And Haas, obviously, as they wrap things up, a lot of the strokes are already locked in, so it's not your normal tournament. However, you can go and just bet. That's been posted today, I believe, over at Coolbet. You can go and just pick individuals to win this event. We're looking at it from a Tour Championship perspective, though.
Yeah. I mean, and for folks that might not be familiar, normally following our golf picks, this is a very different tournament. It's the final 30, now 29, with the loss of Will Zalatoris, who's had to pull out with a back injury. And based on their FedEx Cup standings in these last 2 tournaments, it is a staggered field. So Scotty Scheffler, who's number 1 in the FedEx Cup standings, is going to start at 10 under par. Patrick Cantlay is 8 under par. And now Willie Z, who, as we mentioned, is out, would have been starting in the 3rd position in line for a big check. So you know he must be really hurt. Xander Schauffele is going to be at 6 under. Sam Burns at 5. The 4 unders are Cam Smith, Rory McIlroy, Tony Finau, Sepp Straka, Sungjae Im. 3 under includes John Rahm, Justin Thomas, and Cameron Young. 2 under, Homa, Spieth, Matsuyama, Niemand, Vic Hovland, and Morikawa, Billy Ho, and our Canadian Corey Connors in that group at 1 under par. And the final guy's in an even. So this is very weird. This is a low exposure tournament, although it's the last one we're going to have in a while. So we'll get in on it. Just speaking to the way this sets up with including the strokes. Listen, I think it's hard to move away from Scotty Scheffler, especially with Schauffele and everyone else, and 2 strokes at 5. It's a number that you can't, I mean, to really make it worthwhile, you need to put a big wager on it. And I'm not there. But if you're asking me who's going to win this tournament, I think with the season that he's had and the head start, I think Scotty Scheffler is most likely the guy. But again, betting plus 225 favorites in golf is not really what we do around here. So let's get a couple other guys. And I mean, to me, Tony had a terrible start in that last tournament. I think he was 6 over in the BMW Championship, which was shocking because he had gone 4 straight tournaments without even touching 70, and then got it together in the back end. When Tony gets hot, he's certainly capable of making things happen. And as I said, he's in that group at 4 under. So really, he's only chasing Burns, Schauffele, Cantlay, and Scheffler. So at 20-1, I think there's some value for Tony. And funny enough, 1 shot back, but always ready to go on an absolute run is Jon Rahm. He's at 3 under par, 16-1. Couple small sprinkles on those guys for a little bit of more interesting action as opposed to going with the chalkiest of a chalk favorite with a head start. But that's where I'm going. But as I mentioned, unlike most tournaments, this will be a very low exposure. But once we get to yours, we can sort of look at what the numbers are for guys playing without the stroke handicaps.
Yeah, I'm going to look to Cantlay here. Obviously, he looked absolutely terrific last week. He won this thing last year. Now, he was in the spot where he was coming in at 10 under as opposed to coming in at 8 under, but you're getting him at 4-1. And I think I might like his chances in this thing just as much as Scheffler, even with the 2-stroke lead. Look at what Cantlay has done going back to April. Let me just read this off for you. RBC Heritage, 2nd. Zurich Classic, 1st. Was cut at the PGA Championship. Since then, T3, T14, T13, T4, T8, T2, FedEx struggled, St. Jude, T57, and then, of course, he won the BMW Championship. Like, there's 2 bad events in the last 4.5 months for Patrick Cantlay. So I like him. I like him a lot, actually, at 4-1. I'm going to go with Xander at plus 750. And then for that other group of guys, I'm looking at Cam Smith, who didn't play last week, which is why, he's maybe at 25-1. You said Finau's at 20-1. They're both 4 under to start, right? But if anybody can go on a heater and piss everybody off, it's this guy. So I'm going to roll with Smith at 25-1 to overcome a 6-shot deficit to start this event.
Listen, I don't know if Cam Smith has the balls. He certainly has the talent, but I don't know if he has the balls to go out there and beat everyone. He literally might get the shit kicked out of him by one of those guys on the 18th green. And I'm not even joking. It certainly would be incredible theater if that did happen. And I can't wait to see how he is greeted both by his fellow competitors and the fans at East Lake and Atlanta, with everyone essentially assuming that, he's already signed his live contract and this is it for Cam Smith on the PGA Tour. So there could be some drama and some fireworks if Cam is around. It was a very interesting WD for him at the BMW, knowing that there was that big players meeting and Tiger was coming in, and all of a sudden he was going to take the weekend off. So listen, I get why he's pissing a lot of people off. I mean, but he's earned a spot in the championship. He's been awesome all season long. He should be competing for it. But from the sounds of it, next week he's going to be playing in a live event, which will take him off the President's Cup team, which really sucks because he would have been the best player on that President's Cup team, which of course is the chance that Canada gets in. By the way, shout out to Corey Connors with his finish last week. He is officially a member of the President's Cup team. And depending on if Cam goes, they might have more than just the 4 captains picks. Don't be surprised if Taylor Pendrith, the Canadian, the cool bet guy, might be able to be in that mix, because He played very well. He was T8 last week at the BMW Championship and just had an absolutely monster year. So I'm looking forward to that. Let's quickly take a look at these numbers, the winner without the FedEx Cup starting stroke. So essentially, this is just as if this was a regular golf tournament. Forget about where they're starting. And no surprise, Rory McIlroy at plus 750 is the favorite. John Rahm next up at plus 850. I don't mind JT, Justin Thomas, at 16 to 1.
You've been around him for a bit here.
Well, for sure. And let's face it, he's won this before, I believe a couple times. He has come up huge in the Tour Championship before. And much like Rory McIlroy, these guys raise their game when the chips are down and the checks are biggest. And there's no bigger check on the PGA Tour than winning this Tour Championship and the, 15 million bucks that's waiting for these guys. So I kind of like the value at JT. I'll probably take a look. That same number for Tony in there. And Cam Smith, if you do like it, if you think he's got a good chance of winning the tournament, that 25 to 1, to have the best score in the event, he's 16 to 1. Interesting, though, Rory and Rahm, the clear favorites. Although Scheffler, Schauffele, 10, Pat Cantlay, 11. Those are sort of your group right there. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if somebody from further down, they might not win the Tour Championship, but they could very well win the tournament as far as how many strokes they're playing in Atlanta.
Which has happened for Xander, which is one of the reasons I've got on here at plus 750. He's won at Eastlake before, but it didn't lead to a Tour Championship. So that's something to look at. Before we wrap, Canadian Women's Open, Huss, and then we'll tease a few things we got coming up.
Well, hell yeah. Brooke, and this isn't just the Canadian Women's Open. This is in Ottawa. This is literally in her backyard. And I think about the way she played in Saskatchewan a couple years ago in that Canadian Women's Open. She is such a proud Canadian. And I think that the opportunity to play on home ground, even more so in the shadows of where she grew up with all of that support, is going to bring out the best in Brooke. And this would not be a departure from the way she's playing. She's less than a month removed from her second major championship. There's going to be a lot of pressure on her, but she's risen to the occasion in this event in the past. I love Brooke Henderson. I would have loved to get it a little bit better than 12 to 1, but I understand why the number is what it is. She trails only Nelly Korda at 10 to 1, Lydia Ko and Minjee Lee 11 to 1. So this is a little bit of a hard pick, but Brooke 12 to 1 to win the tournament. And hey, we gave out Brooke to finish top 10 a couple weeks ago. She didn't win the tournament, but she did cash that top 10 at plus 240. So plus 115, top 10 Canadian Open. I'm in on that as well, but there will definitely be. In fact, the bet of the week is not at the Tour Championship. It's on Brooke Henderson to get it done at home at 12 to 1. Let's go, Brooke.
And we've got a lot more coming up with the Lock Shop this week, even more in the future, and we'll give you more details on that as we work our way through the rest of August. We're going to drop an NFL Futures episode for you, likely on Thursday, so watch for that. And then we're going to be back in about 2.5 hours, 7 o'clock Mountain Time, 8 o'clock Central Time, for the Lock Shop running back preview for fantasy, for the Fantasy Football Extravaganza. So I thought the quarterback preview, if you missed it, if you didn't, and it popped up on the Lock Shop feed, so many of you probably got it. But if you did not check out the quarterback preview, I thought it went pretty well. I'm looking forward to talking running backs tonight, Huss.
Oh, it was a lot of fun. And, you've got me your list. I'm assuming that list is PPR scoring, I would imagine.
Yes, that's
based
correct.
on that. So we can sort of talk about some of the differences from PPR to non-PPR, guys that are rising, guys that are falling. These are the conversations you need to have heading into your draft right now. Running back, such an important position. We'll be all over the RBs tonight, and we'll get you receivers and tight ends next week before we get to it. And as I said, this is a fun time. I just had my first draft on Sunday night, so I've already had a real live experience, unlike the 1,500 mock drafts that you've already done. Things really on the line. So, join us tonight, 8 o'clock Central, 7 o'clock Mountain, right here on Twitter. And, of course, we'll have that audio episode up for you if you're just catching this or on the audio later on tonight or for the morning. But make sure to get that and consume it before you make your picks with the boys for your fantasy football draft.
As always, Lock Shop brought to you by our great partners at CoolBet. Use the code LOCKSHOP when you sign up. We'll talk to you a little bit later on tonight.